Welcome to Twilight Fables, where the old stories return cloaked in shadow, reshaped into darker truths than the ones you thought you knew. Tonight, we bring you the tale of Mulan, but not the dutiful daughter or loyal soldier. This is the story of a girl born of blood, bound by vengeance and cursed with a gift that devours her from within. This is Mulan, the thousand faces. Before the fire, before the blood, before the faces that would never again belong to her, Mulan had been happy. She had been a child of laughter, quick to chase butterflies through the rice fields, her mother calling after her with fond exasperation. She knew the rhythms of village life, the smell of steamed buns rising in clay ovens, the sound of neighbours sharing gossip as they wove baskets, the shimmer of lanterns swaying above festivals. Her father's hands were rough but gentle, always lifting her high upon his shoulders to watch the dragon dancers. Her mother's lullabies carried her into dreams where the world was nothing but safe and whole. She had been loved, she had belonged, and she believed it would always be so. But happiness is fragile. It can shatter in a single night. The Emperor's soldiers came with steel and fire, riding hard through the valley. They claimed rebels had found shelter in Mulan's village. The punishment was not an investigation, not a trial. It was annihilation. Homes set ablaze, families cut down, children trampled beneath hooves. Mulan hid as the world she knew was torn apart, her mother's blood soaking her small frame. The warmth of family was replaced by the stench of smoke. Lullabies gave way to screams that never ended, and when silence finally fell, she rose from beneath the dead, not as a child, but as something else entirely, something cursed, carrying a secret she could neither understand nor escape. The smoke had not yet cleared when she opened her eyes. Mulan lay pressed into the dirt, her small frame wedged beneath the lifeless arm of her mother. Her lungs burned with the stench of charred timber and seared flesh, her ears deafened by the echoes of screaming that had long since ended. The world was silence now, silence and the slow crackle of what remained of her village burning itself into ash. She was only 8 years old, but she understood. Her world was gone. Her mother's skin had cooled, stiffening against her cheek. Mulan did not cry. Her tears had run out hours ago. Instead, she tried to be as still as the dead around her. Hoofbeats still echoed faintly in the distance. The soldiers riding back toward the capital, their work complete. The Emperor's decree had been swift and merciless. The village accused of harbouring rebels was to be destroyed. No trial, no mercy. She had survived by instinct. When the soldiers stormed the house, she had clutched at her mother's dress and hidden beneath her. When the blade fell, she did not scream. When her mother's body slumped, Mulan flattened herself beneath it, letting the blood soak into her skin, her breath shallow and silent. And then, the strangest thing, when the soldiers passed, one had bent down, his face inches from hers. His eyes narrowed as he searched the shadows, suspicion prickling. Mulan had felt the weight of death upon her, the certainty that her small body would soon join the rest. But as his hand reached out, something happened. His face, his eyes, his hand. She felt them as if they were her own. Her body shivered, then warped, her tiny features blurring, shifting, until they mirrored the soldier's face itself. When his eyes met hers, he recoiled as though staring into his own reflection. With a curse, he staggered back, muttering of ghosts, and fled to join the others. When Mulan touched her skin, the smoothness was not hers. Her hands were larger, her jaw roughened. Her voice, when she gasped, was not the voice of a child, but that of a grown man. In terror she willed it away, and as swiftly as it had come, the soldier's likeness melted from her, leaving her small and blood-stained once more. It was then she understood she was something unnatural, something cursed, and it was that curse that spared her life. She wandered for days, half-starved, half-mad, until she collapsed on the side of the road. That was where a veteran soldier found her, a broad, greying man named Huaju. He carried her to his home, bandaged her wounds, and asked her no questions. When she finally whispered her name, he nodded as if it meant something sacred. From then on, she was his daughter. The years passed in a strange, fragile peace. Huaju's wife treated her kindly, though she never bore children of her own. They gave Mulan food, a bed, and the illusion of safety, but the shadows never left her. At night, she woke in sweats, her body half shifted into shapes she had brushed against in dreams. Her mother's hand, her father's frown, even the faces of neighbours long dead. She learned to control it in secret, practicing when no one could see, staring into water until her reflection bent and twisted into anyone she imagined. It was power, terrible, hungry power, and beneath it burned the ember of memory, the emperor's decree, the soldier's laughter, the faces of those who had slaughtered her kin. That ember grew hotter with each passing year, no matter how much her adoptive father tried to teach her patience, humility, honour. She loved him, but love did not quench vengeance. When the summons came, Mulan felt it before Huaju even spoke. War. The northern tribes had crossed the border, and every household was called upon to provide a man for the army. Huaju, though crippled from years of service, still had his name recorded. His wife wept, clutching at his sleeve. Mulan watched silently as her father prepared his old armour, dusting it off though his hands shook. That night, when the household slept, she sat by the candlelight, staring into a bronze mirror. Her reflection stared back, her own thin face, dark hair falling like a curtain. Slowly, she pressed her fingers to the glass. Her features rippled, shifted, and her father's face emerged, layer by layer. His stern eyes, his weathered brow, even the scar that cut across his jaw. She whispered his name aloud, and his voice came from her throat. The candle trembled, and so did she. If she let him go, she would lose him, just as she had lost her first father, just as she had lost her mother. The world had taken too much already. No, this time the world would pay. At dawn, Hua Zhou rose to find his armour gone, his sword missing. Panic seized him until he stumbled outside and saw the trail of footprints in the dust leading down the road. His daughter was gone, but not as herself. She wore his skin. The army accepted her without question. Why would they not? She was Hua Zhou in every detail. His voice, his gait, his scarred hand gripping the hilt of his blade. She even knew stories only he would know, drawn from years of listening by the fire. No one doubted her, but beneath the mask, Mulan's true face twisted with grim satisfaction, for this was her chance, not just to fight, not just to survive, but to rise through the ranks of the Emperor's army, and one day to stand before him in the flesh. And when that day came, she would repay his cruelty with the same merciless hand he had shown her village. The army thought Hua Zhou had come to serve his emperor, but in truth, Mulan had come for the throne. The army was a sea of men, and within it walked a shadow wearing another man's face. Mulan kept her father's form as if it were armour itself, every detail worn with the discipline of a soldier. She drilled with the others, sparred with the others, even shared drink and laughter with the others, all while something inhuman coiled beneath her skin. The men saw Hua Zhou, a veteran returned to duty, grizzled and quiet. They did not see the girl hiding behind his eyes. They did not hear her heart beating not with loyalty, but with hatred. War was not the grand march sung in poems. It was mud, blood, and hunger. Their commander, a man called General Wei, drove them mercilessly through drills. "Strength comes from unity," he barked, pacing the lines. "A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and the weak," he paused, his gaze sharp as a blade, "are broken." Mulan kept her head bowed when his eyes swept over her. She could feel it already, the scrutiny, the danger of being unmasked. But another thought grew stronger with each passing day. She could be him. The first battle came like a storm. The northern tribes swept down on horseback, their cries shrill and unearthly in the night. Arrows blackened the sky. Men screamed as iron split flesh. Mulan fought in silence, sword steady, face grim, just as her father would have. Yet within, a different thrill took root. She shifted in the chaos, not fully, not enough to reveal herself, but just enough, a flicker of an enemy's face as she cut him down, a voice borrowed to scream and confuse his allies. She moved through the battle like a phantom, faceless and many-faced at once. When dawn came and the field was littered with corpses, she stood among the survivors, streaked with blood. The soldiers murmured of Huazhou's ferocity, how the old man fought like 10 men. Mulan only nodded, her father's scar tugging against her borrowed skin. But in her dreams that night, the faces of the fallen crowded around her, her mother, her father, strangers she had slain, all pressing against her, demanding to be remembered. She woke, gasping, her reflection in the water basin, flickering from one to the next, until she could barely hold her own shape at all. Who was she? A daughter, a soldier, or only a hollow vessel for stolen flesh? Whispers began soon after. Men claimed they had seen Huazhou's face vanish in the dark of battle, replaced by another. One soldier swore he had seen him wearing his own face for a heartbeat. At first, the others laughed. Too much wine, they said. Battle makes men see demons in shadows. But when more spoke of strange visions, the laughter faded. Around the campfires, the word spread, Yao Guai. A demon walked among them. Mulan listened from the edge of the firelight, the flames painting her borrowed face in shades of orange. Their fear was a cloak around her, warm and suffocating. Part of her thrilled at it. She was no longer the helpless girl beneath her mother's corpse. She was power. She was vengeance. But another part trembled, for power had its price. The more faces she wore, the more the edges of her own dissolved. When she looked in the mirror now, her true face came slower, weaker, as if reluctant to return. The turning point came after the siege at Xiang Fortress. The general himself praised Huazhou before the men, clasping his shoulder with iron grip. "You have the strength of youth still, old friend," he said with a smile. "The Emperor rewards loyalty such as yours." The moment his hand lingered, the decision crystallized. That night, Mulan crept through the shadows of the fortress, her body sliding from one face to another, a servant here, a guard there, until she reached the general's tent. He sat at his desk, head bowed over maps, the candle throwing long, crooked shadows against the canvas walls. "Report," he said, without looking up. She did, in his own voice. When he lifted his head, his eyes widened in horror. Across from him stood himself, every line of his face, every thread of his uniform, perfect. His sword flashed, hers flashed faster. The fight was silent, efficient. When he fell, gasping, Mulan leaned over him, her father's face melting away as she slid into his voice, his scent, his very breath. By dawn, General Wei was dead, and yet still leading his men. The army never knew. They only marvelled at their commander's renewed vigour, his ruthless cunning in battle. They cheered him, obeyed him, followed him deeper into conquest. But some, late at night, swore that his eyes gleamed strangely in the firelight, and among them the whispers grew louder. Not just a demon now, but a shapeless spirit, feeding on the skins of men. In the Emperor's court, reports filtered back of uncanny victories, of an unbreakable general whose face seemed somehow changed. The Emperor listened, unmoved. "A soldier is a soldier," he said. "If he bring victory, he brings honour. Let the peasants whisper." But behind his throne, one advisor bowed deeply, lips curling into a knowing smile. For Mulan, the mask was almost complete. She wore her father's face. She wore her general's. Each shift brought her closer to the palace, closer to the golden dragon who had burned her childhood to ash. And yet, when she gazed into polished steel, she saw only fragments. Her mother's eyes, her father's frown, the general's scar. The girl called Mulan flickered, faint, almost gone. But vengeance did not care who she was, only what she became. And she was becoming unstoppable. The palace walls gleamed like ivory, lit by 1,000 lanterns. Within, the Emperor dined on delicacies, while his soldiers bled on distant fields. He trusted his generals, especially Wei, the man who never lost, the man who returned victory after victory. But the man standing in the general's armour was no longer General Wei. Beneath the brocade and steel, Mulan's heart beat with a rhythm that was not her own. She had worn her father's skin until it felt like truth. She had swallowed Wei's face until she could no longer remember the sound of her own voice. Now, standing in the echoing halls of the Forbidden City, she prepared for the final mask, the dragon's mask. Her arrival at court was greeted with cheers. The courtiers bowed deeply, whispering of Wei's brilliance. The Emperor himself embraced her, golden robes spilling over the throne like a river of sun. "My most faithful servant," he declared, voice rolling through the chamber. "Come, share in my triumph." Triumph. The word curdled in her stomach. She saw again the flames of her village, the lifeless eyes of her mother, the smell of ash that never left her skin. She smiled with Wei's lips. "It is my honour, your majesty." The nights in the palace were thick with incense, laughter and deceit. Mulan moved through it all like a ghost, learning the corridor, every guard rotation, every hidden chamber. Ministers sought her favour, servants obeyed without question. The Emperor, arrogant and blind, invited her into his inner circle. Yet the whispers followed her even here. A chambermaid fainted after swearing she saw the general's face melt into that of a stranger. A guard crossed himself after meeting her eyes and seeing not one reflection, but many, layered like masks, stacked upon masks. The court began to fear. The word returned. Yaoguai, the emperor dismissed it with a wave of his jeweled hand. Let them fear. Fear keeps loyalty sharp. But in his dreams, he began to see her, not as Wei, not as Huazhou, but as a figure faceless and shifting, sliding toward him, with his own crown gleaming atop its head. The night came without herald. The palace lay hushed under a swollen moon. Mulan walked the halls in silence, her footsteps swallowed by rugs woven with golden dragons. At the throne room doors, she shifted into a guard. At the stairwell, a servant. At the final corridor, a minister. With every step she shed and claimed, her body pulsed, her mind splitting into fragments of voices that screamed, laughed, prayed. By the time she reached the emperor's chambers, she was not certain whose skin she wore anymore, but the door opened, and there he was, the man who had stolen everything from her, sleeping soundly on silken pillows. Her hand trembled as she drew the dagger, not from doubt, from the weight of faces pressing against her. 1,000 souls she had swallowed, all demanding blood. She stood over him. The emperor's eyes fluttered open, and he saw himself. She had become him before the blade struck. His features on her face, his voice on her tongue. Justice, she whispered, and drove the dagger home. His cry was hers, his blood was hers, and when the servants burst in, they found not the emperor slain, but the emperor sitting upright, crown upon his head, robes unruffled. The corpse on the bed was gone, melted into nothing. Their emperor smiled. "A nightmare," he said softly, "nothing more," and the court believed. Days turned to weeks, and no one questioned the change. Their emperor grew sharper, crueler, hungrier for conquest. Ministers who opposed him vanished. Servants trembled when he passed, but victories multiplied. Wealth poured in, and so they swallowed their unease. In mirrors, though, the truth gnawed at Mulan, for when she looked, the emperor stared back. Not her, never her. The girl from the village was gone, buried beneath 1,000 faces. Her laughter, her tears, her name, all smothered beneath the weight of borrowed skins. At times, she clawed at her reflection, begging for her mother's eyes, her father's smile, her own voice, but only the emperor's face remained, grinning with cruel patience. She had avenged her family. She had taken the throne, and in doing so, she had become the very monster she sought to destroy. The empire bowed to her, but beneath the crown, she was faceless. Only vengeance wore her skin now.